welcome to Perazim Creative Compass. Today I'm joined with Terena Danner, fashion influencer and PR powerhouse who's making moves in the creative industry. Terena, hello, nice to meet you today.
So good to meet you. Thank you so much for having me.
We're super excited today to have you on Creative Compass because you're a cool individual and we want to explore that today. So first of all, tell us a little bit about what you do. You work in fashion, PR, and also do content creation. Talk us through your story.
So my first level of experience actually began working with musicians. So I have quite a network in the music and entertainment business. And I came across the opportunity to work with musicians during lockdown. So before I even knew what a press release was, I was building my contacts who were journalists and members of the media in order to kind of bring out their storytelling and create more visibility and brand presence on their behalf. So I essentially sort of helped to bring their stories to life and represent voices that perhaps were a little bit disconnected in sort of their previous representation. And it was a case of working with agency signed, record label signed artists or artists who are sort of in their come up and trying to be sort of more recognized within their genres. And then after that, I realized that I wanted to get into the strategy of storytelling as well as brand presence for, building reputations and relationships both between stakeholders and their consumers, as well as public figures and their wider audiences. So essentially, I was working in PR full-time, and I learned a lot of my early skills there for strategy and dot connecting as well.
Amazing.
And then following that, I realized that for me, it wasn't just about visibility and creating a brand presence for others, but I realized that I actually had a voice myself. So I wanted to be able to express that in a way that felt authentic to me. And content creation through fashion was just the most authentic way that I felt I could express myself. So for me, it's kind of a conversation more than a balancing act between PR and between brand strategy and the business side of things, as well as the creativity, which is what brings out my kind of unique voice and sort of being able to resonate with wider audiences.
I mean, I think you speak so eloquently about this, and it's so beautiful to hear your story and how you got into such an interesting world. It's a world that I really enjoy, like brand strategy and like creating content. And I think it's something, even as an individual who likes creating content as well, I'm still trying to find kind of my voice, my niche. Before we get into that though, I wanted to ask you, so you've started a PR agency, Impulse, PR and events. What inspired you to start that?
So this all happened during lockdown, and it was a case of managing a musician who was based out in Atlanta. And at the time, people obviously weren't moving around as much. And I really just wanted to create a platform where musicians could feel inspired to sort of tell their story and also represent themselves and connect with others. So basically bridging the gap between diasporic voices, as well as just creativity, music, and intertwining different genres together. And so based off of that, I just thought, I wanted to be able to bring those people together in a way that felt authentic, but in the online space. And I think that I wanted to be able to engage audiences through sort of like a digital platform. And then based off of that, I moved on into, managing talent and creating editorial content. And it sort of just naturally grew from there. I realized I had the ability to host events, especially on behalf of musicians. And I think it's all about nurturing talent as well for me. So I realized that these three streams of sort of being a dot connector, writing press releases and doing events, all kind of existed under one house. So it was sort of just like a natural thing to kind of bring it all together under a PR and creative or events agency.
That's amazing. I mean, what kind of took you to make the leap? Because obviously you've had all these different inspirations from working in management and working with talent. Was it maybe lockdown that pushed you to kind of, is that the main factor that pushed you to start and go, do you know what, I'm doing this for me, I'm doing it independently?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always been an entrepreneurial-minded person.
Nice, love it, love young entrepreneurs, we love to see it.
Literally, I think it's just one of those things that you just have a fire in your belly and you want to experiment and just try new things. And I think the best way to learn is sometimes under that pressure of just figuring it out on your feet. And I knew that I had, you know, the network that kind of, you know, would benefit from having their voices heard and understood, and not in like a hyper sort of obvious way where, you know, some PR agencies, they seem to kind of really stick to certain angles, but doing it in a way that felt authentic to their own stories and actually bringing out their own sort of organic growth as well. Because I mean, some musicians, they'd write a song and maybe they don't want it to go out, or maybe they're on a journey, and so it's just like being able to say, oh, actually maybe you do this photo shoot, or maybe you can be in this collaboration,
be very personal about
and you can be really bespoke about the services that you're offering. So I think that is kind of like how I just made the leap, just being in my bedroom, writing press releases, building media lists, and actually understanding how the systems of media relations work. But then from a fashion point of view, it was sort of like bringing in the kind of creative element, and sort of allowing that to be my own sort of voice and my creativity by night and by day, sort of working on the strategic element and the systems and, you know, the strategic storytelling as well.
Amazing. I mean, seems like you had the confidence, you built your network, and you went for it. And I admire it. I really love people that just do the most, and you're like, do you know what, I'm going to go for it. It's very inspiring. And obviously being a young entrepreneur has its challenges. What would you say is the biggest challenge that you've faced personally in the PR and fashion space?
I would say in terms of biggest challenges, it would be a case of just there being so much out there and it being such a fast moving industry that sometimes it can be quite difficult to quiet the noise and separate yourself from that and just sort of listening to your inner voice. And I would say that for me and for other creators, it's a case of sort of knowing how to actually be unique in your outlook and sort of lead with that perspective that's unique to you, because at the end of the day, I think understanding nuance is probably what makes your work speak volumes, and resonate with the consumer in a way that feels really organic and authentic. So I would say it's just negating that challenge of, you know, the trends. You know, there's even the rise of AI and people trying to really put themselves out there as unique entities where you can only get that certain content, image, feeling through them as an individual. And it's just trying to kind of make sure that you're really being true to yourself in that journey. And also just sometimes taking the time out to just be slow and reflective and build with intention. I think integrity is a huge element which I try to hold myself to. Luckily, I've had a lot of mentors and people that have helped me along the way to sort of give me that advice. But I think coming from the perspective of being someone who's nurtured talent myself, and also getting the other side of the coin as a content creator, I think that they do work hand in hand, and I'm able to actually see what's going on, chart the trends, understand why they might have a certain sentiment or want to kind of veer towards a certain path, but at the same time sort of give them the space to be true to themselves and grow at their own pace as well.
That's so interesting. I think, yeah, being nuanced and blocking out the noise, that's some good bits. You mentioned mentors that have helped you and guided you along your journey. Who have been particular inspirations or mentors in your career?
So I would say that in my career I've had a huge number of people that, you know, I could consider them mentors, and they might not have been there necessarily in a consistent way. But they would have given me advice when, you know, it was important and maybe pivotal for that particular moment. But then I gain a lot of my inspiration from people like trailblazers and powerhouses, like Emma Grede, founder of Good American and Skims, as well as Vanessa Kingori, ex-editor at British Vogue, and Enipal, who are really working to empower sort of the voices which are sort of underrepresented, and sort of bringing those private conversations into the public sphere and making them sort of digestible by audiences like, you know, people who may not necessarily have been aware of some of those microcosms or sort of social epochs, and actually bringing that out, because you realize that in some of the best campaigns, it's always about looking at the nuanced voices and being able to sort of make that speak volumes.
For sure.
Because there's always someone somewhere that who can interpret what you're saying as like a wider message and resonate with it.
For sure, I like that. What would you say is the best pieces of advice that you have received from a mentor?
Ooh, gosh, I would say definitely just owning your area, looking at the world through your own lens, and being quite specific about the narrative that is true to you and your journey. I think sometimes you've got to slow down and build with intention.
Yeah.
And just like sort of honoring that process, I think for me would be the best advice, especially in such a fast moving and ever evolving media landscape.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point building with intention is so important. I think even in my own career journey, it's about making decisions that are going to be, because it's very easy to get caught up in that, I need to be doing so much all the time. I need to be doing hustle culture, grind culture, and that's important. But if you're running fast paced in the wrong direction, what's the point?
Exactly.
So yeah, I think that's a really good piece of advice. And let's talk a bit about career achievements. Obviously, you've achieved so much already. But what would you say is your proudest achievement to date?
I would say, I mean, there have been many moments where I've sort of looked back and been like, even though that's like not the biggest thing, but you know, sometimes looking at the smaller wins and just having gratitude for those moments. But then I would also say that, you know, I had the pleasure of hosting my inaugural private members event in Mayfair in August, where I brought together a plethora of tastemakers, content creators, founders, creative directors, and music execs into one space. And I mean, it was one of those moments where I genuinely felt like there was a real synergy between everyone. And I mean, it was really intimate and focused on just empowering others. And I think sometimes you enter these spaces and you think, well, how can I actually make it work from a monetizable perspective? Because a lot of the time I think creators focus on maybe the output and the creative content, but just having a no BS space where people can actually speak about, how can I actually fund this? Like, what are the processes? Like, what does it look like speaking to someone in finance about these elements, and how do I bring it all together? And I think that's what I wanted to bring to the fore with these events, and just create the space where people could feel free to talk, but like in an obviously glamorous environment, and feel like they could dress up and still be themselves and sort of express themselves in the way that feels most natural, but then also feel like they can go home and then they're still thinking about certain processes, and actually they know who they could reach out to at least start that first layer of conversation.
So like the ultimate glam networking event. That sounds great. I mean, I'm expecting my RSVP soon. Okay. Of course. Expecting my invite. Would love to attend.
But I think whilst, you know, that was quite like a glamorous event, it was the launch. So I think with following events, we'd like to kind of open up the space to people who are in wellness, fitness, and other areas, because I think it's important to understand that people are multifaceted, and that, you know, there are various aspects to your life which all bring together that side of storytelling and like who you are as a person, and just creating a space where people can feel that they can be several versions of themselves at once, I think is something that I really
that sounds so much fun. So Terena, you are such an incredibly motivated individual in what you do, and it's actually been a pleasure chatting to you today.
So pleased. It's been a pleasure.
I always find it so fascinating seeing where people get their inspiration and their motivations from. So I'd like to ask you, what keeps you so motivated in your journey? You do so many things with so many people. What is that driving factor for you?
That's a really good question. I would say my driving factor is just kind of being really rooted, and just knowing like my heritage and, standing on the shoulders of giants, so to speak, and just knowing like, who's come before me, and just being able to kind of use some of those things to propel me forward. And just know that like, they're not better than you, but neither are you better than them. And so if you do look up to anyone or you feel inspired in any way, there are things that you can learn even from people who you least expect, and just being really open-minded to that. I think that's what keeps me motivated, just sometimes the little winks that you get from the universe to just keep going, as well as just the fire in your belly that just doesn't really go away, to just pursue the things that you want in life. I think that's amazing. I don't know what more to say to that. I think that's an amazing attitude to have, and I think with Creative Compass, we speak to so many, multifaceted, interesting individuals, and that is something that seems to always crop up. This fire in your belly, the kind of motivation, because let's face it, being in the creative industries, it's a challenge. It can be hard to make it. We were talking about this previously, right? Sure. It's hard to make it your full-time gig. So if you're passionate about something and you put your all into it, and you've got that fire, you will succeed, and you're proof of that. Well, thank you so much. I feel like it's still a way to go yet, but I'm definitely I'm inspired by others, and I'm looking forward to seeing where we can move things in coming months and years. But I also wanted to say that I feel sometimes people think that they have to have had everything ready to go, and it has to all be perfect. And I think I experience that a lot as a perfectionist myself. Just that you want everything. You feel like unless this is like top grade stuff, this should not be seen by the eyes of anybody. And I think that sometimes it's just about starting where you are with what you have, and just making good go of it, and then learning as you go along.
I heard a phrase this morning actually, or perfection is the enemy of good. And if you're waiting for things to be perfect, you're never going to start. And I think that's so true in content creation specifically as well. When if you're in front of the camera and you're being vulnerable and you're putting yourself out there. This is something that I struggle with, trying to like grow my content creator journey. And I think sometimes you have to just be like, okay, who's actually gonna care? I'm gonna just go for it, because otherwise I'll never start. And I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with, making those first steps, because they're waiting for everything to be perfectly in line. And sometimes you just have to take that leap, and what's the worst that's going to happen? You put something out there, especially on social media, things take a bit of time to grow anyway, with TikTok specifically. But I think that's some really good advice there.
And also consistency as well. Like sometimes the numbers aren't going to be like wowing you and making you feel like this is definitely something I'm going to go for. Or you don't have to have a room full of people applauding you to like keep going. Sometimes you just have to quietly applaud yourself and just recognize the small wins, and just really pour into yourself. I think a lot of the time when it comes to content creation, we're hard on ourselves, or even just like a day job, there's always more that you could do, but just looking at your strengths and starting from there and saying, right, these are the things I can work on. These are the actionable steps that I can take towards it, and just, ticking things off little by little and pouring into yourself, I think for me is...
Terena, you have inspired me so much after this. I'm going to go back, I'm going to make my content, I'm going to do that's really, because I think it's really hard sometimes to give yourself that quiet applaud, because it can be, we all are guilty of validation from strangers on the internet, right? Especially in the content creation world.
That's very true.
And I'm guilty of it, but we're all guilty of it. But it's just important, like you said, remind yourself, check in, and the consistency is hard when you're not seeing results. I think that's something I struggle with, because you're being consistent in itself, but then just believing, and as you said to me earlier, trusting the process. So yeah, I think it's, before we wrap up, I want to ask one more thing, because it's been, I could chat to you for hours, Terena. This has been so nice.
It's been so nice.
But I wanted to ask you, so what is next for Terena? Tell me.
So, you know, I've got a few things in the pipeline. I think April's sort of it's starting to look like a beautifully layered month ahead. There's been something that I've been quietly working on the past few months, something that kind of ties together my love of storytelling, content creation in fashion, as well as just intentional brand building and heritage. So that will be coming out on the 12th of April.
Exciting.
Without wanting to go into it too much, but I think I really wanted this to be something that people can use and wear in a way that's, you know, it feels really true to themselves, and it kind of brings out a feeling as opposed to just, you know, a project which is to be consumed. It's sort of meant to be understood and felt and resonate in a way that's more of a philosophy.
Okay. Well, very excited to hear that.
Yeah.
By the time this comes out, this is probably already going to be out there for the people. So if you want to plug it, we can put all the links in below.
Yeah, I think later on I will plug it. I mean, it's coming out next week, which is on my birthday as well. So it's meant to be just like a little note to you know, to the world, to say like, here I am. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to actually just sharing a little bit more of my voice with my audience.
Well, best of luck with that.
Thank you.
Terena, apologies, I said Terena before. No. Terena, it's been an absolute joy speaking to you today.
Thank you
I
so
feel
much.
Inspired. I think our listeners will feel inspired too. And keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so
speaking to
much. Great.